Pre-Rosh Hashanah sermon as we're about to usher in the new year 5783. I want to invite all to attend high holiday services in person, wherever it is that you may live. Find your closest synagogue, look up your closest Chabad. If you live locally, we'd love to have you join us Monday at the Creative Arts Theater in Agora Hills, that's on the campus of the Lindero Canyon Middle School. Please note that I will be delivering a totally different sermon live in person than the one I'm going to give this evening here on Zoom, so you don't have to worry about hearing the same thing again. Before I dive right in, I don't think there can be any ignoring of the elephant in the room, and that I am delivering this talk in somewhat of a hobbled state, as I'm recovering from surgery I underwent a week ago, Wednesday, to repair multiple fractures to my collarbone, as well as extensive damage to my hip area, suffered during a major car accident exactly 3 weeks ago at this very hour. Thursday, September 1st, it was at 7:42 p.m. Those of you who are familiar with the circumstances, the impact and the total destruction from back to front of the vehicle I was driving are probably just as astounded as I am by this miracle, the miracle of a human being somehow emerging in one piece, alive and breathing, from what can best be described as a crushed sardine can. You know, after one survives a major illness or other situations of such, especially one that threatened one's very life, it is customary for the individual to go to the synagogue and to step up to the Torah and recite a blessing of gratitude known as Birchat HaGomel. And this I did as soon as I was physically able. But I would like to take this opportunity this evening as I return for the first time to the public eye to repeat that blessing here and now with all of you online, and ask that you respond with Amen. Baruch HaGomel L'chayavim Tovim Tovot Shegmalani Tov. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the world, who rewards the undeserving with goodness and has rewarded me with goodness. In temple times, in such situations, one would bring what was known as a karban toda, a thanksgiving offering to the Holy Temple, to show one's appreciation to God for having saved them from danger. The person offering such a karban, such an offering, would also bring 40 large loaves of bread to the temple, after which the meat and the bread would be taken home and eaten. And the Torah stipulates that all of it must be eaten that very same day with nothing left over to the next morning. Now, there was no way that a single person or even his extended family could possibly consume such a large amount of food in such a short amount of time. So obviously they had to invite their friends and neighbors to join the meal. It's almost as though the Torah was forcing the individual to share the simcha, to share the joy with others. He would rejoice in God's blessings with the community as he would recount over and over again the story of his escape from danger. You see, more than just a way of publicizing your personal miracle, the act of inviting others demonstrates the Jewish attitude towards gratitude. When you have been personally blessed, you're now called upon and expected to see to it that the blessing now becomes a new source of joy and blessings for others as well. And this is perhaps my greatest takeaway from what happened to me on the evening of September 1st, and what I look forward to putting into action for my family, for my community in the months and God willing years to come. Now, I'll be speaking more about my personal reflections of the accident in the past 3 weeks of my life during my pre-Yisker Yom Kippur talk at the Creative Arts Theater as we get into the Yisker mode. But on the subject of gratitude, I certainly owe large debts of it to so many people who were there for me in those critical moments after impact and throughout these days and weeks since. And this includes the firefighters and the paramedics and the helicopter crew and the nurses and the doctors and the surgeons and the therapists at both UCLA Medical Center and Kaiser in Woodland Hills, as well as some incredible medical professionals and personal friends in the community who guided me on the best possible treatments and options. I also want to say a big thank you and a debt of gratitude to my own family, to my wife Mati, to all my children, my son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws, and all my grandchildren for their incredible demonstrations of love and support throughout this ordeal. And finally, to the members of our community, as well as friends and students and colleagues and fans all over the world. You have been writing and texting and emailing, and it's been so overwhelming, and all of your prayers and your kind wishes for my complete and speedy recovery. I have no doubt that these have been so instrumental to my being well on my way to just that. So from the bottom of my heart to all of you, thank you. Thank you. In the merit of this, may God keep you and yours healthy and safe throughout the coming year and always. We're going to do another pre-Yom Kippur Zoom, and you're all welcome to join. It's the same Zoom link on October 2nd. That's the Sunday before Yom Kippur, same time, 7 p.m. Pacific. The subject will be close encounters of the holy kind. So there was an American tourist. He's visiting Israel, and he's out late at night, and he realizes that he forgot his watch in the hotel room. He doesn't know what time it is. So he stops an Israeli, and in his broken Hebrew, he's trying to find out, Ma ha-time shel achshav. So the fellow responds by motioning that he has no watch either. So he stops the next guy, same question, same response. I don't have a watch. Stops the third guy, no watch. He stops a fourth fellow. The man responds, Ein Sean, I don't have a watch. So our frustrated American tourist says, I don't understand you Israelis. What do you do when you want to know what time it is? So the Israeli smiles and takes out a shofar from his pocket. And he says, when we want to know the time, we blow the shofar. Blow the shofar? What does that have to do with what time it is? So the Israeli hands him the shofar and he says, try it, you'll see. So the tourist takes the shofar and lets out a tekiah, a blast. And within a few seconds of blowing the shofar, a window opens and a lady shouts out, hey, Mr. Americana, what's the matter with you? It's 2:15 in the morning. We're trying to sleep here. And with that, the Israeli passenger smiles and says to our American, works every time. So what time is it? It's Rosh Hashanah time. A new year, new spiritual energy, new beginning, and new blessings. One of the most powerful emotional prayers of the day. We say, Berosh Hashanah Yukasevon, over Yom Tzom Kippur, over Yom Tzom Kippur Yechasemun. On Rosh Hashanah it is inscribed, and on the fast of Yom Kippur it is sealed. How many shall pass away, and how many shall be born? Who shall live and who shall die? Who shall be poor and who shall be rich? It's all written, it's all sealed. What's in store for us in the year? The happiness, the sadness, the joy and the pain. But the prayer concludes, it doesn't end with that. And it says this, even that which is written and sealed on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's not the final verdict. It's not the end. It's not destiny. Uteshuva, utefila, utzedaka, ma'avirin esraya hagzera. Through the power of repentance, through the power of prayer and connecting ourselves to God, and through our acts of charity, of tzedakah, we have the ability to undo and erase any negative decree. We can create our own destiny. We can shape our own future. We can make it a brighter one, a healthier one, a more fulfilling and joyous one. But the key word is we. We have to make the move. We have to do something. We have to take the initiative. We have to make Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur significant in our lives. Where do we start? And how do we find the strength and the discipline and the self-control to come into Rosh Hashanah and to come out of Rosh Hashanah, to come out of Yom Kippur with new resolutions that we actually implement in our lives this coming year? Making changes in our daily lives is not the simplest of things to do. We get used to a lifestyle, a pattern, our daily routine, and it becomes difficult to change. And yet deep down, we know that we must, we know that we should. The status quo we know is never really good enough. And if one thinks it is, there's this old Yiddish expression, as gut is besser, nicht besser. If good is good, is better, not better. So we need to have this moment of honesty with ourselves. Are we as good today as we're ever going to get? Is this the best there is? Is this it? Have I reached my perfection as a human being? Have I reached my perfection as a Jew, as a parent, as a spouse, as a child, as a friend? It's a fundamental question of life. Are we as good as we're going to get? So as we prepare for the high holidays this evening, I'd like to speak with you about a teaching from the Talmud. The Talmud shares some fascinating insights into life, yet surprisingly, it shares these insights in its discussion on death. It says as follows: when our time on this earth is up and our number is called, and we are brought before the heavenly courts, we will be asked a series of questions. 5 questions that will define our life's experiences, our accomplishments, and our failures. So let's take a look at this teaching. Question number 1. We will have to give an accounting. When we are up there after our time on this earth is up and we're before the heavenly court, we're going to be asked to give an accounting. Listen closely to question number 1. For all the permissible joys and pleasures of life that we fail to take advantage of. Surprise you there. That's the first question. Did you enjoy life? Did you take advantage of the beautiful world and the beautiful gift that God gave you? Life is meant to enjoy. The world was created as a castle, as a wonderful resort for us to enjoy and to appreciate. People often make the mistake that the observance of Judaism denies us the pleasures of life. And to be sure, there are many restrictions within Judaism. And yes, many of them deny us and our appetite the freedom to follow our lusts and desires. God has this thing about cheeseburgers. He doesn't want a Jew to eat bacon. It's his hang up, all right. It's not just cheeseburgers and bacons. There's a few other things. There's other dietary laws, but he's the boss. He restricts and limits our sexual pleasures to a monogamous relationship. He wants our Shabbosim, our Sabbaths, to be spent with our family and with community, with various laws of how to keep the Shabbat. But don't make the mistake that God seeks to deny us a joyous life. Nothing can be further from the truth. Everything in Judaism and everything about Judaism leads to a simcha, to a joy, to celebration, to happiness. Now, of course, we kvetch a lot. That's us. That's part of our nature. We've been kvetching ever since we came to the Sea of Reeds. And Moses stood and raised his staff over the waters and it parted. And we looked and we said, "Oy, what do you mean onwards? We're going to get our sandals all muddy." So we like to kvetch. You may have heard the story of this woman who was once in the supermarket, and a 3-year-old girl was having one of those fits. You know, the kind that are reserved specially for supermarkets? It starts with whining, and then it gets to crying, and then it gets to screaming, and then it gets to jumping up and down. I want this, I want that. We're talking this girl going full throttle, all guns blazing. The mom very calmly says, Sarah, don't cry. Very soon you will be home and everything will be fine. The kid wouldn't let up. Sure enough, she launches into the siren. You know, the siren, that's when she does, "Ah!" So the whole supermarket hears the crying, thinks the mother is some abusive mom. The mother keeps her voice even and measured, like a mantra. Sarah, please don't cry. In a few minutes, you'll be in your car, on your way home. All will be good. In the meantime, another shopper is watching all this and is very impressed at how calmly this woman is talking to this child that's acting so obnoxiously. The demands are getting louder and louder. The fits are more animated, but she's staying cool. Sarah, don't cry. Soon we'll be done. You'll be home. Maybe you'll take a nap. The other shopper comes over to her and says, I must tell you, I am so impressed at how calmly you keep talking to little Sarah there. The mom says, oh, no, she's Rachel. I'm Sarah. So we know how to kvetch, but we also know how to celebrate. Whereas other religions speak of asceticism and poverty as the path to holiness, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, taught us that the path to godliness and the path to holiness and the path to spirituality and the path to fulfillment can only be through joy, through celebration, enjoyment of this gift of life, this gift of pleasures, this gift of family. You know, the verse, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, serve God filled with joy. What's the image you have of every artist when they're trying to draw the image of a chassid? It's always this smiling, dancing, singing individual. When people would write to the Rebbe about their struggles with depression, he would give his advice and always finish with the line in Yiddish, Tracht gut wird sein gut. Think positive and it'll be positive. You create your own environment. You create your own space. Where your mind is, that's where you are. Tracht gut wird sein gut. There's a story they tell about the famous magician Houdini. He boasted that he can get out of any locked jail within 60 minutes, provided that they would let him walk in his street clothes and not watch him work. They can have any lock. He can trip the lock. 60 minutes, he can be out. So a little town in the British Islands took him up on the challenge. They had just built a new jail, and they wanted to demonstrate their new escape-proof prison. Houdini arrives. He's escorted to the jail cell, and the door is closed. Everyone departs the area of the cell, and Houdini goes to work. Now, he had hidden in his jacket pocket this flexible steel rod, and he would use this to trip the lock. And he's working on it and working. Usually it takes him just a few minutes. 30 minutes go by. Can't open it. 45 minutes, 60 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours. He couldn't do it. After 4 hours of sweating in total exhaustion and in defeat, he quits and he leans against the door to rest. And as he leaned against the door opened because the door was never locked. He was trying to pick a lock that wasn't locked. All he needed to do was turn the handle. You see, we look for happiness in so many places. All we need to do is turn the handle because it's there. You'll find joy in the life that God gave you. You'll find joy on the stage that he placed you on by following the script of life that he gave to us in the Torah. You just have to open the handle. Just open the door. There was this little boy playing in the park, he's playing with himself. He's got a bat and a ball, and he's throwing up the ball and trying to hit it. And he makes this bold statement, I'm the greatest hitter in the world. And he throws the ball up and he swings and he misses the ball. So he picks up the ball and he tries it again. I'm the greatest hitter in the world. And he swings and he misses again. So he tries the third time, throws the ball up. I'm the greatest hitter in the world. He swings and misses again. And he says, I'm the greatest pitcher in the world. My friends, whoever you are, you're the greatest you, because there's no competition to you. You're an original. This young mother was feeding her 1-year-old in a high chair. She was having a bad day and she felt as if the stress of life was too much and everything was just too difficult. And she began to cry. And this little 1-year-old simply took his pacifier out of his mouth and put it in his mom's mouth. Nothing else needed to be said. That was the answer. Life, love, family, and joy. The Breslover Rebbe once said, if you wake up in the morning with nothing to smile about, smile anyway, and God will give you plenty to smile about. There were 2 shoe salesmen. They went overseas to scout for new markets. Their first stop was a country where everyone walked barefoot. So the first salesman sends back an email, leaving tomorrow, no business here. No one wears shoes. Why would you sell a shoe salesman to a country that doesn't wear shoes? So he leaves. Second salesman sends back an email, great potential market, no competition. Which one best describes you? Are you salesman 1? Are you salesman 2? Ever watch these kids playing on the beach? They work for hours. You ever watch them? They make these huge castles out of sand. And they're pretty good at it, right? They carve out doors and towers, and you're so impressed. Along Mittamal comes this big wave and swoosh. Within a second, it's all turned to wet sand. You feel so bad for these kids. You're so upset for these kids. They work so hard for hours on one wave, and gosh, it's all gone. And you expect to see sadness, and you expect to see disappointment. And almost every time, you know what you're going to see? Laughter. The kids get up and they laugh, and they splash in the wave for a few seconds, and they sit down and they stop building another castle. You see, it's the experience itself that they're enjoying. It's the beach itself. It's the sand itself. It's the wave itself. They find it so amusing and so enjoyable. If only we could learn from kids. If only we can have the excitement when our castles and our expectations and our business deals and our portfolios don't go our way. When our waves hit, if we can just splash around a little bit with a smile on our face and move on to the next castle. For it's life itself that's worth celebrating. And it's the experience in life, the buildings and the waves that we have to find a way to enjoy. In essence, we're going to be asked on Judgment Day, did you smile through life? Other religions focus on the pleasures and joys of heaven. It's all about heaven. It's all about getting to heaven, how we get to heaven, losing your place in heaven. Judaism focuses on the pleasures, joys, and celebration of life. Life here on earth. Did you smile through life? The Talmud continues. Question 2. When one is being escorted to their final judgment, they ask him this question. Question 2. Did you conduct yourself properly and with faith when you were involved in business transactions? That's question 2. Were you honest? Did you conduct business affairs properly? Did you have faith not just when you sat in the synagogue, but were you a man or a woman of faith in the office as well? You see, many people perceive Judaism to be a set of laws relating to blessings and holidays and rituals between man and God, and it is. But Judaism is more than a religion. Judaism is a way of life. A person must act Jewish in everything he or she does, not just when it comes to ritual. Do you know that fully 1/4, 25% of the code of Jewish law, of the Shulchan Aruch, discusses the proper Jewish behavior in the workplace and in the business world? 25% of all laws brought down in the code of Jewish law are business law related. If you look in the Torah, you'll see this constant juxtaposition between the ritual commands of Judaism and the ethical obligations between one human being and another. One verse may say, don't eat meat and milk together. The other verse will say, do not cheat, do not misrepresent, do not engage in fraud, because they're all part of the same religious structure. Acting ethically and honestly is not just another precept in Judaism. It's paramount to understanding Judaism. When we say we are to be a light unto the nations, that's how we are to be a light unto the nations. People will learn from us. My Shabbat is God's business, my food is God's business, and my work ethic is God's business. It's sad that we don't always see it this way. We would view, right, someone eating a cheeseburger, God forbid, on Yom Kippur as an outrage, right? But the same God who said no to cheeseburgers and the same God who said no to eating on Yom Kippur also said no to dishonesty, said no to lying and to cheating. Ever since the Garden of Eden, when Adam and Eve were expelled and forced to work the land, earning a living and pursuing one's own wealth has become the single task that has occupied most of humanity. That's what most of the world is busy with most of our lives, earning a living. No wonder then so much of the Torah focuses on proper conduct and religiosity that we're supposed to demonstrate doing what we as humans do more than anything else at the workplace. You see, the inclination for desire, the inclination for wealth and for money is perhaps the strongest inclination and perhaps the most difficult one to control. It is a desire that can never be satisfied, no matter how much it is fed. It's never fulfilled. Physical weakness, old age doesn't lessen the drive. You never hear anyone saying, I'm not in the mood to make money, or not now, I have a headache. The rabbis taught us he who has 100 wants 200, and that will never end. This is why the Torah surrounded our business day and our business life with over 100 mitzvot. All the mitzvot of kosher combined in the Torah, there are 28. There are 11 that are related to gossip and to slander. There's over 100 on business ethics. God could have asked us not to pursue a living altogether. He could have told us to eat manna from heaven every single day and live in the wilderness. But that's not what he chose for us. He chose a life in the land. He chose that we bring ourselves into the workplace, into the store, onto Wall Street, and asked us to teach the world how to do so honestly and ethically. Judaism wrote the book on business ethics, and we should be and we must be the light unto the nations when it comes to honesty and integrity. It was this group of kids from a sleepaway camp. They went on a field trip for whatever reason. Kids, I used to be a head counselor and a director of camps for many years. And I don't know if it's the same thing today, but in my days, you take them to the greatest amusement park in the world. You can go to Disneyland, Magic Mountain, Knott's Berry Farm, wherever it is, and the kids somehow gravitate to the arcade. They love just playing the video games. Maybe things have changed today, but in my days, you bring them to the amusement park to go on one ride, two rides. Where are they? They're in the arcade. Well, this camp counselor had the same issue, took his kids to some amusement park, and right away they're in the arcade. So he's scouting around the arcade, keeping his eye on the kids in different parts of the arcade. And he knew his kids from his bunk, from his group, which kids he needed to keep the eye on, which kids are a little bit rowdy than the others, and which kids can get into trouble. So he's keeping his eye on them. As he's watching some of his campers in the arcade, this is what he sees. A father of another child, not part of his camp, goes to the register to get some change. And the $20 bill slips from his pocket onto the floor. And he sees as one of his campers takes notice of the $20 bill on the floor. He walks by and he gives the $20 bill a little kick, kicks it out of the way, moves it away from the man who dropped it, quietly picks it up and puts it into his pocket. Now, the rowdy kid that the counselor was really looking at, not the kid that picked up the $20, but the kid that was always the troublemaker in the bunk, he also saw what happened. And after observing what his buddy, his bunkmate did, the camper in his bunk, he goes over, he takes a $20 bill from his own pocket, walks by the father that's at the register who doesn't know that he drops the $20 bill. This other kid drops the $20 bill on the floor and says, "Excuse me, sir, I think you dropped something." He took $20 out of his own pocket, dropped it on the floor, and tells the guy, "I think you dropped something." The guy says, "Thank you so much." And he picks up the $20 bill and he goes away. Counselor observed all of this. He observed camper 1 and camper 2. And he's in total shock. He goes over to the kid that dropped the money, that put his own $20 on the floor. And he says, look, I saw everything. I saw the whole thing. I saw as it happened. Why'd you do such a thing? I'm obviously proud of you. But I want to know what motivates someone, a kid. $20 is a lot of money, especially in an arcade. You want every quarter you can get. Today, it's not a quarter anymore, but those days. And this is what the kid answered. When I was young, I would go visit my grandfather a lot. My grandfather had a tobacco store. And one day, a customer came in and he was paying my grandpa to register. He dropped the bill from his pocket. A kid that was in the store at the time saw this and quietly picked up the dollar and walked away. My grandfather finished the sale. And as the man turned to leave, he took $1 from the register, ran to the other side of the counter, put the bill on the floor, called back the man and said, sir, I think you dropped something. And with a touch of embarrassment and almost with tears, the camper says to his counselor, the boy in the tobacco store that picked up the dollar was me. And after the customer left the store and knowing that my grandpa saw what I did, I walked up to him and just handed him back the dollar. My grandfather looked at me and said this, from you, I expected better. That's all he said to me. And those words have haunted me for years. My grandfather, he tells his counselor, died less than a year ago. Died just a few days after my bar mitzvah. I hope today, Grandpa's proud that I lived up to his expectations. You see, my dear friends, the be-all and end-all of life should not be to get rich, but to enrich the world. That's our task. And we do so with honesty. We do so with integrity. We do so by being truthful, by being what we call a mensch. So we will be asked when we arrive at our heavenly trial, did you conduct your business honestly and with emunah, with faith in God? Ethics of our fathers teaches us who is rich, he who is satisfied with his lot. It takes faith to have that mindset, to believe, as the saying goes, God gives every bird its food, but he doesn't throw it into the nest. They need to find it. God provides for each and every one of us. He wants our effort, our work, and as the Mishnah states, our satisfaction with our lot. How many people destroy their lives by this constant pursuit of more and more and more? Someone once conducted an experiment with some processionary caterpillars. These are caterpillars that walk in the procession and just follow the one in front. So he did this experiment. He arranged them in a complete circle around the rim of a flower pot so that each one was touching the one in front. And in the center of the flower pot, he put pine needles, which is the food that they eat. And the caterpillars begin their march. And they're following the one in front, who's following the one in front, who's following the run. They're in a circle. And they're going around and around the rim. And they did this hour after hour, day after day. For 7 days straight, they continued to march around the rim until they all dropped dead from hunger and exhaustion. Now, there was an abundance of food just inches away, and yet they starved to death because they just followed blindly the one in front. You see, they confused activity and accomplishment. Let's not confuse the two. Accomplishment and activity. The fact that we put in more and more hours, that our life is filled from morning to night with activity, with work and more work, so that we can purchase more and more and more toys, does not equal accomplishments. It's rather a path to destruction. We may earn more, but we accomplish so much less in the true enjoyments and fulfillment of life. Question number 3, the Talmud continues. Did you establish set times for the pursuit and study of Torah? Kavata itim la Torah. Did you set time for the study of Torah? Did we connect ourselves to our heritage? Did we connect ourselves to our sages, to our biblical heroes, to our patriarchs and matriarchs? Soon after the Yom Kippur War, a man named Enrich enrolled for classes at an adult education institute in Israel. He fills out the registration sheet and he checks off just about every class available. And the rabbi asks him, "What brought you here?" And he tells him this: "I was stationed in the Suez Canal, and I was part of a team that was assigned to cross the canal. And we all knew there was no hiding it, that this was a most dangerous mission and that many would not come back. We knew it, but that's what we signed up for. The Yom Kippur War was a war of survival. We waited for 3 days for the green light to go ahead. And after 3 days, the mission was canceled." Now, the first reaction was joy, right? Your life was spared. You're not going to have to go on a mission that you knew you had a 50-50 chance of surviving. But then he says, I began to think, how did Isaac in the Bible, in the story of the binding of Isaac, how do you think he felt when after 3 days, and then being put on the altar by his father, and then his life is spared, a voice calls out and says it was just a test? Well, maybe at first relief, but at some point another feeling comes in. You want to understand what just happened. You want to understand the impression that his father was so committed to the point of sacrifice. He must have been so inspired to find out more about God. Why was God challenging his father? What's the idea of faith in God? He must have been so driven to understand more about his father and more about God. Our soldier Enrich says, I live with the possibility of death like Isaac for 3 days. I was prepared to give my life for something called Judaism. I was prepared to give my life for a Jewish state. And I realized I don't know anything about Judaism. And yet I was prepared to give my life. I want to learn. I want to know. I want to know what it is that I and so many of my people are willing to die for. And so I come to study Judaism. My friends, you have to wonder why thousands of years of Judaism and Jewish life, of your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your ancestors, all through the generation, would never give up the Torah. Why? Why would your ancestors treasure it so much? That curiosity must drive you, that you need to understand, you need to know what's in that book, what's in our heritage. Kavata itim la Torah. Did you spend time? Did you spend quality time? Did you spend fixed time for the pursuit and the study of Torah? Now, today, my friends, you have no excuses. Some of you live in the Conejo Valley, so you have an adult education institute here, the Conejo Jewish Academy, that you can come to classes just about every day of the week, afternoon, evening. But even that, there's no longer an excuse if you don't live in the Conejo Valley. Every single subject is available to you on YouTube's and on every internet site that you have. There's so much Torah knowledge available to you. I don't care if you live on the moon. You can study every single part of Torah. Kavata itum la Torah. It's in your hands. You could no longer point the finger and blame, I don't have this, I don't have access. You have the access. It's a gift that God gave you. It's your heritage. It's your gift. Know it, pursue it. We just released our new fall, winter, and spring semester of adult education for the year. So when you hang up, when we're done with our Zoom talk, please go to jewishacademy.com. Sign up now for classes and lectures and workshops. We have it booked for you, set for you from October through June, all up on the website. So please do check us out. We love to see you and study with you. Some will be available on Zoom as well. We're trying to get you all back in person because we miss seeing your faces as well. So if you live nearby, close by, join us in person. If you're out of the area, join us on Zoom or YouTube or any other ways that we're publicizing all of our classes. Let's get back to the Talmud. We're up to question number 4. Asakta b'pirya v'rivya. Did you raise a family? The Talmud continues, did you make your family the priority of your life? There's a man in Chicago, his name is Sidney Glenner. He tells the story of how on the day of his father's 93rd birthday, he decided to leave work and spend the afternoon with his dad. His dad was in remarkably good health, both physically and mentally. It was a very pleasant surprise for both of his parents when he showed up. His mother served a nice lunch, and father and son spent some wonderful quality time together, chatting and reminiscing. And afterwards, Sidney went back to work, happy that he spent a special time with his parents. That night, he was getting ready for bed. And you notice it's 11:45 p.m. Knowing that his father was a night owl and wouldn't be disturbed by a late night call, he decides on a whim to call his father. He dials his number. He says, "Hi, Dad. You know, it's almost midnight and October 23rd is almost over. I wanted to be the last one to wish you a happy birthday." His father was quiet for a moment and then said seriously, "Sidney, you've been a good son. I love you." Sidney was taken aback. Although his father was a very nice man, his family knew that he loved them all very much. For some reason, it wasn't something that he was comfortably verbal. He never verbalized, "I love you, I love you." He showed love. That sudden expression of emotion was totally unusual and uncharacteristic for him. So he was caught off guard and he was all choked up and he could barely get the words out. And he says, "Thank you, Dad. You know, I love you too." Hangs up the phone. Sidney reflected on how amazing it was to hear those words, even from a 93-year-old father who was already a great-grandfather many times over. And it made him think of how he should be saying these words like to his own kids and to his grandchildren more often. 3:30 that night, Sidney gets a frantic call from his mother, telling him that his father was in respiratory distress. He rushes to his parents' home, but after he arrived, he can only stand by helplessly as the paramedics try to revive his father. And they didn't succeed. The last words he heard from his father were the most precious of all, something he was able to store in a very special place in his heart forever. What a gift his father left him in that last moment. So if you knew that your time was extremely limited, what would you do with it? What would you want to convey to your loved ones that might stay with them for years and even perhaps generations to come? The good news is that God willing will all be granted many, many, many long, happy, and healthy years. But who says you have to wait for the end to make your mark? Why wait? Why not do it now? See, all throughout life, we're really jugglers. Every one of us, we're a juggler. We're juggling so many items, but they're not all the same. They're not made of the same. Some items are made of rubber. Some are made of paper. Some are metal. And some are made of glass. Don't drop the glass. Your spouse, your children, your parents, your siblings, your grandparents, don't drop the glass. Don't drop the family, the home. Make it a place of harmony, a place of peace, a place of tranquility. As a parent, our responsibility is more than just to raise our children. It's more than just to feed them and to house them. We do that for cats and dogs as well. A parent must also give their children roots and wings. Roots, they must know and be proud of their Jewish identity. Not just that they knew their Haftorah at the Bar Mitzvah and Baruch Hu es Hashem Baruch, important, but that's not deep roots. Roots means to truly know their ancestors and their rich heritage, to truly know their tradition, to know the mitzvot. And then we have to give them wings so that they can soar high. They can go out into the world, they can know their purpose, know their identity, and fly high. Imagine coming home from work on a Friday afternoon. The week flew by, left you exhausted, and there in all its beauty and splendor is the Shabbat table. Candles radiating, the lights that symbolize Shalom Bayit, peace in the home. There's a decanter of wine representing blessings and joy. 2 freshly baked challah representing the manna, the food that God provided our people in the wilderness. And you spend the Shabbat dinner without any interruptions, no pressures, no stress from the office, no competition for your time, no customer complaints, no distractions, no emails, no cell phones, no deadlines, just time to be shared with your spouse, with your children, with your parents, with your friends, with your community, with your people. These are the roots that we give our children. These are the roots that give birth to wings that allow them to soar. Yes, we juggle many responsibilities, but don't drop the glass. The Talmud concludes with one more question. Tzipisa liyeshua. Did you yearn for Mashiach? Did you yearn for redemption? Did you try to hasten its coming? Did you have hope in the future? You know, Thomas Cale wrote a book called The Gifts of the Jews. It's a wonderful book about all the things that the Jews contributed to society and how the world is a different world today because of the Jewish people and the gifts we gave them. But clearly, of all the gifts we gave, hope in tomorrow, a belief in tomorrow would be right up there. How often did it appear as if the lights of the Jewish people would be turned off for good, that our end was imminent, that we breathed our last gap of air, only to bounce back again and again and again. There was a father and son, they were together at Auschwitz, and it came time for Hanukkah, and the father constructs this little menorah out of a scrap of metal. And for a wick, he took some threads from his prison uniform. And for oil, he used some butter that he saved up. Father, the son asks, is it worth risking our lives for this? Because you know, if we get caught, it's over. Son, the father answers him, we may be able to survive the work. We may be able to survive the starvation and this concentration camp for a while. But we will never survive, not for a single day, without hope. This menorah is the fire of hope. So many of our bubbies and zaydis, when they realized that they had but a few precious moments to gather the most precious possessions before the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, ransacked their homes, what did they grab? What did they go running for? What did they try to hide? They grabbed candlesticks, tefillin, menorahs, kiddush cups, because they had hope in the future. That one day the candle would be lit again. That one day the kiddush cup would be filled with wine again. That one day the tefillin would be donned again. That one day the menorah would be kindled again. They hoped, more than hope, they knew that Judaism would not end in Auschwitz. It wouldn't end in the gulags. It wouldn't end in Siberia. Judaism would go on. Tzipisa liyeshua, did you have hope in redemption? Our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors did. Do you? Do you believe in tomorrow? Do you believe that the redemption can come? Do you believe that the whole world can become a world of peace? And if you do believe, what are you doing about it? How are you hastening it? How will you make it come quicker? There was a drought and the rabbis called for a united day of prayer. The chief rabbi gets up and he sees thousands of people there for him to lead in prayer. He's staring at the audience. He's gazing around the entire audience. And he says, everyone go home. It's not going to rain today. We came to pray for rain. What do you mean it's not going to rain today? He said, because you don't believe. You don't really believe. No one brought a raincoat. No one brought an umbrella. If you really believed that we could make it rain with our prayers, you would have had umbrellas in your hand. If you believe in tomorrow, then plan for it today. Live for it today. Now, I was first introduced to the study of Talmud at the age of 8. As in most yeshivas, the very first section of the Talmud that they taught us was that of Elu Mitzias, which discusses the laws of returning a lost object to its rightful owner. By Torah law, it's not automatically finders, keepers, losers, weepers. The rules are very complex and very involved. And if you haven't studied this Talmud, you should study it. You'll really appreciate the complexity of Talmudic law. And one of the main concepts that come into play on this issue is there's something called yiyush, which means the abandonment of hope. When a person loses an object, by Torah law, he still retains legal ownership of it. The item still fully belongs to him until and unless we can establish that he felt yiyush, that he gave up hope. Once we know that he gave up hope of ever recovering the object, then the law is that the finder may keep it. But so long as we believe that the owner still has hope of getting it back, the finder has a legal, moral, spiritual obligation to try to track down the owner and return the lost item to him. Now, how does that make any sense? This object is no longer in the guy's possession, right? He can't see it. He can't touch it. He can't use it. He can't sell it. He can't derive anything from it. It's lost. Why would it still be considered his property? What's the person's remaining connection to that item? And the answer is one word: hope. As long as he still holds on to hope, he remains connected to it. If, on the other hand, he fails yiyush, he abandons hope, at that point, his connection is severed, and it's finders keepers. You lost it and it's no longer yours. The moment you relinquish hope is the moment you forfeit your entitlement. This is such a powerful concept because it extends to all areas of life. Think of what the Talmud is really teaching us. Think of the deeper lesson the Talmud is saying to us that we first studied when we were fifth graders. As long as you have hope, you are still the owner of your destiny. You're still in the game. It's only when you succumb to hopelessness and to despair that the game is over. During World War II, there was a family in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Their son was sent off to fight in the European theater. One awful day, the family was notified that their son was missing in action. The parents were totally devastated. At that time, they belonged to Congregation Beis Yehuda, which was under the leadership of Rabbi Yaakov Twersky of blessed memory. Rabbi Twersky would visit with the family at least once a week. He would give them strength. He would give them encouragement. He would try to lift their spirits, and he would give them hope by telling them missing in action doesn't necessarily mean killed in action. Maybe miraculously he survived. Maybe he's a prisoner of war. Maybe you'll see your son back. Maybe he'll be home one day. Week after week, he would sit with them to keep their hopes up that their son was still alive. When the war was finally over, the family receives an unbelievable telegram. Their son was alive. Indeed, he had been held as a prisoner of war, and he was alive. What joy. The soldier was released from his captivity. He was first sent back to his base before his long trip home. And there he found a stack of letters, a whole stack of letters waiting for him. The interesting thing was, every letter was written by the same person. Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Twersky of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, was the author of every one of those letters. You see, every week before Rabbi Twersky would leave his house to counsel those poor grief-stricken parents, he sat down first and he wrote a letter to the boy. His intent was that if he was going to try to infuse a family with hope that their son was still alive, he needed to have that mindset himself. He needed to really believe. He needed to really have hope himself. So he demonstrated that by sitting and writing a letter to a boy he had to believe was still alive. And he would mail that letter on his way to this home, so that when he would sit there and try to give hope to these parents that their kid was alive, he believed it himself. It couldn't just be empty words. The hope had to be real hope. And it's only because his own hope was real that he was able to effectively transmit that sense of hope to the boy's parents. King David writes in the book of Tehillim, hope to God, Be strong and strengthen your heart and hope to God. Why the repetition of the words hope to God? He begins the sentence with hope to God, and he finishes with hope to God. Because as the commentaries explain, it's not always easy to keep hope alive. Sometimes when you're down, you think you'll never get back up again. But it's exactly at that point of chazak v'yametz libecha, we find a way to strengthen our hearts so that we're able to hope. These are the questions that the Talmud tells us will be asked when we're called before the heavenly court. Many people study this piece of Talmud and think the Talmud is talking about death, about the awe, the fear of the day of judgment. But they're missing the whole point of the Talmud. The Talmud's not talking about death at all. The Talmud is teaching us about life, about maximizing our time, about not dropping the glass as we juggle our way through life, about focusing on that which truly matters in life. The Talmud's not here to teach us how to die. The Talmud's teaching us how to live every single day of our lives. When we study the Talmud, we begin to understand this is what life is all about, and we implement these ideas into our lives. One of the reasons we blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah is to remind us of the Akedah, of the binding of Isaac that we spoke about earlier. Vayisav Ramas Einav, Abraham lifts up his eyes. And what does he see? He sees that there's a ram caught in the thicket by its horns. And he offers the ram as an offering in the place of his son. And we remind God on Rosh Hashanah the faith of our father Abraham and the faith of our father Isaac, so that we remember, God should remember their act and he should bless us, their grandchildren, with a good year. It's noteworthy that the symbol that we use to remember this great act is not the knife, it's the shofar. The knife represents death. The shofar represents life. In 1998, one of the runners in the New York City Marathon was a woman by the name of Zoe Kaplowitz. She was 46 years old at the time, and she suffered from multiple sclerosis. She had had it for more than 20 years. She could only walk with the help of 2 crutches, one slowly, painful step at a time. And there she is on this cold day in November, one of thousands who came to run the marathon. Zoe Kaplowitz walked for more than 31 hours and 15 minutes. And she finished the 26-mile race with her left leg dragging along. She came in last, but by God, she finished that race. When she was asked, why did you do it? She said this: when you're born, God gives you a television set with hundreds of channels. Sometimes you get to a channel and it only has static. You have a choice. You can sit in front of that static and stare at it, or you can get up and change the channel. My commitment in life is to change the channel as frequently as possible. So what's your static? And what's it going to take for you to get up and change the channel? God is creating a new world this Sunday evening, a new world, a new year that's never been here before. A new light will shine down upon us with new energy and new blessings and new potential and opportunities for growth. Today is not and should not be the same as yesterday. Now, this new year is not and should not be the same as last year. For all of us, we need to seize the moment, change the channel, have the courage to grow and the courage to change. So are we as good as we're going to get? Is this it? Have I reached my perfection as a human being, as a Jew, as a parent, as a husband and a friend? I think not. I think not. There's work to be done, but it's exciting work. So let's think about those 5 questions. Let's more than think about them. Let's address them. Let's improve upon them. And let's celebrate many long, happy, and healthy years together. As we do each year when it comes to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we make an appeal for tzedakah, as we opened with the tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah, the greatness of giving tzedakah. during these Yom Narome, during these high holy days. And so we do our Kol Nidre appeal. We started early so that everyone has an opportunity. Those that will be in Shul on Yom Kippur, there'll be Kol Nidre pledges there. But if you'd like to participate in our Kol Nidre appeal, we have this tradition that we take all the pledges that are given leading up to Yom Kippur and on Yom Kippur, and we put these names in the ark, and it remains there during the entire prayers of the high holidays, so that your mitzvah serves as an advocate before God Almighty to see to it indeed that you're blessed with a Shana Tova Masuka, with a happy year, with a good year, with a sweet year, with a Gesundta year for all. So if you'd like to participate online in our Kol Nidre appeal, you can simply go to chabadconeo.com/appeal. I'll put the address up on the screen momentarily. I want to bless all of you indeed that the gates of heaven should be thrown wide open to all of your prayers, with God inscribing and sealing you and yours for a Shana Tova Masuka, for a good and sweet year. I'll see you hopefully over Rosh Hashanah, over Yom Kippur. We'll be back on Zoom Sunday, October 2nd at 7 p.m. for another Zoom pre-Yom Kippur talk. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you throughout the year on jewishacademy.com and all of our lectures and our classes and our courses. A blessed year to all. And again, personally, thank you all for your personal prayers and for all of your concern and for all of your tefillos. I love you all. And I thank you again from the bottom of my heart for the reaction and all of the warmth and all of the love I've experienced over the last few weeks. Thank you and God bless. And again, I'll put the screen up for you. See this screen?